What's going on, everyone? So, the original My Bloody Valentine came out in 1981. Then, in 2009, we got a remake featuring Jensen Ackles. Now, I was actually a fan of both. I actually preferred the 2009 one. I just thought it was a decent movie. Now, was it like groundbreaking or the greatest thing ever? No. But I thought it was a movie that, even to this day, if I see it on or if I'm scrolling and trying to find something to watch and I see it, like, gladly put it on. I thought it was very well done. I enjoyed it as far as like remakes go. And of course, because we live in a world that's just filled with pumping out remakes, particularly with Blumhouse, we're getting another remake to the remake of the original My Bloody Valentine. Um, it's very frustrating. Now, look, this is Blumhouse's work. This is what Blumhouse does. Blumhouse loves to just kind of remake films and horror movies and remakes of remakes. They're still in the Exorcist debacle, and it's just, to me, it's like, how many different ways and how many different times can you remake a film? A horror film at that. It's like, what are you going to do that's incredibly groundbreaking? And I get the idea of these remakes and whatnot and these sequels to, or direct sequels to originals. I get it's to attract a newer generation and a newer audience, but those films still exist, right? And it's like, anybody that's a diehard horror fan is going to stumble across these films one way or another at some point. And it's like, again, I talk about this regularly, I feel like now. It's like the definition of insanity. It's like you do something over and over again and expecting a different result. It's like you keep remaking and rehashing all these films, and then they do terrible, and then they go, like no one wants to watch movies anymore. It's like, no, you're not making anything good. You're not making anything worth watching. Right? Again, I mean, both My Bloody Valentine movies aren't these like great, groundbreaking, like, oh my gosh, they're not films for most people that immediately come to mind as much must watches. Like when you're referring horror and slasher films and stuff to various just friends or relatives or people in general, right? Like, where do you rank My Bloody Valentine? Right? Like, you usually are like a Scream, a Halloween, a Michael, right? And then even if you're going some like abstract things, right? Like, or some like off branches, you're like, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Valentine, right? Like, you're just going through the, urban legends, right? Like things that come to mind. It's like, and look, I'm a big supernatural guy, right? If you've been familiar with this channel or the Lethal Collective or just been in my live streams or any of that, I'm a sucker for supernatural. I love that show. Right? Dean, Sam, right? Jensen Ackles, Jared Padalecki. I'm all for it, right? I love that The Boys, Eric Kripke, right? He's doing The Boys thing and he's like bringing in all the supernatural cast. I love that stuff. We're even getting Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Sign me up, right? And look, Jensen I thought was great in that film. I thought he was fine, right? But again, it wasn't like this great, oh my gosh, like, even for me being such a big supernatural fan, I'm not somebody that's like, oh, you have to see My Bloody Valentine. And now what's probably going to happen is Blumhouse is going to remake this movie. It's not going to do very well. And then they're just going to keep repeating the cycle. Or what they're going to do is they're going to do what they keep doing, which is, hey, let's make this the beginning of a trilogy, and you're going to get a My Bloody Valentine trilogy, which, now, spoiler alert for the films, which, if you haven't seen them, I don't know what to tell you. They're almost 20 years old. I mean, the original is like 30-something years old or 40-something years old, but, it ends on a cliffhanger, right? Survives, walks out, and, kills one of the miners, or one of the paramedic people, and that's how he's able to escape, right? And wanders off, and it gives this allure of like, oh, he'll be back, right? So I could absolutely see Blumhouse going that route. I could absolutely see Blumhouse going like, hey, we're going to make a My Bloody Valentine sequel, right? And just this new trilogy, and you're going to get the first film. And yes, the first film, it's going to be a remake, right? Not going to be anything new from what you saw, because they never are. They're always the exact same thing, right? But don't worry, I'm telling you, right? The part 2 and part 3 is where it's at. It's just like, come on. How many times how many times are we going to see these ideas just fail miserably, and then they just keep pumping them out? It's crazy to me. And you're seeing all these films, like, not even like in the horror space, you're seeing films, period, just tank and not doing good at all. But there's nothing like what's worth watching anymore. Like, Hollywood isn't pumping out these like great films. And I'm not saying that we never do. There is a film on occasion where you watch and you're like, wow, that was really good. And of course, it's all subjective. Right? There's probably things that I hate that you probably love. Right? I mean, it's always based on the individual, but numbers don't lie. No, and they keep pumping out these films, even films that you may love yourself, are tanking. They're doing horrible. And it's like, well, nobody wants to go to theater. It's like, no, you're not. And then it's like, well, when we do make an original, nobody goes and watches it. And it's like, because the original film that you're making is awful, right? It's like if you were, again, good art, good just anything, right? Good videos, good film, good story, good whatever. It finds its audience. There's even films that, have tanked in theaters and then found their audience, right? Think of how like films became big back in the day, like before social media. It was all word of mouth, right? Like Scream is a great example, right? 1, My Bloody Valentine slasher. 2, Scream. Talk about Scream 90% of the time on this channel. So using Scream as an example, we didn't have social media and all these things to really hype up and promote this film, right? Like the big box office draw was Drew Barrymore, but she hadn't done anything in a while, and it was just like it did better the longer it was in theaters, right? Like its second month made more than like the first month, right? Because people, again, good film found its audience. You made a good quality film that people loved and enjoyed and went, dude, you gotta go see this. Or, man, I gotta take some friends to this. I'm gonna watch this again. Right? Like, you make a good film, guess what? But it's just, when you're doing all these half-ass remakes and you're just pumping out films just for the sake of pumping out films, it's like, how are we supposed to get excited? Right? It's like, okay, you made an Exorcist trilogy, or you're making an Exorcist trilogy. It's like, okay, right? Like, sure. Okay, we'll give it a chance. Is it any good? No, it was awful. It was so bad they fired everybody and they have 2 more films that they need to make. And it's like The Strangers, right? It's like you're starting a new trilogy with The Strangers. Okay, so are you laying a new foundation? Are you creating, a new interesting story that could potentially draw in new audiences and then existing audiences, fans of the original or fans of Prey at Night? No, it's just carbon copy remake. But hey, don't worry, part 2 and 3 are going to be something like you've never seen. You already lost the audience. First impressions are everything, right? If you make a bad first impression, it's really hard to get people to come back around. And it's like, I don't know, it's just, like, look, I'm in the horror space, so of course, I'm going to watch it, talk about it, give my honest opinion on it. But it's just, again, it's hard to get excited when it's like, oh, okay. So instead of making like a new Valentine style slasher, right? And look, it's not even about being super original, right? Because, there is the argument of like everything that's been thought of has been thought of, right? Everything that's been done can be done. How many different ways can you make a slasher and whatnot? But like, again, there's nothing wrong with a concept being familiar. Nothing wrong with a story being familiar, right? I mean, most films forever have been familiar one way or another, right? It's a copycat leak, right? But my thing is that doesn't mean that you have to slap on an old title and just, instead of making something familiar, making a carbon copy and pumping it out, right? It's like, it's like, oh, here's a whatever, right? Here's a turd, and we're going to say it's, it's yogurt. It's like, no, it's still, we know what it is. Like, it's just, it's very frustrating to me personally. But that's why, as always, this is a discussion. So I pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Are you excited for this? Are you like, hey, I like the original. I like the remake. I could do a new remake for modern times. Sure. I don't know. Anyway, I'll pass it on to you guys. You let me know. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. How you feel? Whatever your thoughts are. So say it's sentiment as me. If you feel differently, love to hear it. Let me know down in the comments. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one.